It's a Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And on today's show, we are going to discuss the Florida Panthers' first game of their 4-game road trip where they drop a 3-1 decision against the Arizona Coyotes. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, November 2nd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MoneyMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also subscribe to Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, and the newest show on the Locked On Podcast Network, Locked On NHL Prospects. Will be covering all the regular season activities around the National Hockey League. So, Cats fans, if you decided not to stay up for this game, I will say you probably made the right choice because, man, if there was one game, if you happen to not stay up for this game, if there's one game that was very similar to the games we have seen in the first 9 prior to this one, it was really the game against the Philadelphia Flyers. That this game versus the Arizona Coyotes was very reminiscent of. The Panthers got so many chances, doubling the amount of shots, even though the tempo of the game was very slow to start the game. But special teams continues to be the story. Now, for the 7th straight game, the Florida Panthers have given up at least one power play goal to their opposition. And this is the perfect time to bring in my guest on the show. It's a Winans Wednesday edition of the show, and a pretty frustrated Jacob Winans coming in as we were talking about pre-recording. So, Jacob, welcome back to the show on what is a not so good result for the Florida Panthers on their first game of their 4-game road trip.
I appreciate you having me. This is becoming a kind of annoying trend for us because last year almost all of our shows were after big wins. We had a couple of nice comebacks that we got to discuss, and now we're on 2 in a row where it was just a really just kind of pathetic result that we're recording after. So yeah, not the best. I was having a pretty good day until I turned on that game. I was thinking, maybe quick 2 points will cap off my solid day today, and then they just completely buzzkilled it. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, for me, these late night games are a little different when it comes to the day job, as far as like switching from morning shift to night shift, and then coming home like around an hour or 45 minutes right before puck drop. So it's a little bit of a difference of a schedule. So it like throws so many things out of whack. And of course, for the team itself, the hockey team that we're talking about, their schedules and their body clocks are a little bit out of whack. Of course, the start of a 4-game road trip. Of course, there are no easy games in the NHL, and this Arizona Coyotes team. Of course, we know what the mission is for them, tanking for Connor Bedard, the number 1 overall pick, trying to create so much cap space so that when they do get their new arena, they could try to lure someone like an Austin Matthews as well when he does hit free agency, even though I still believe he's going to stay in Toronto and sign long-term there. But still, that's the mission that Arizona is trying to do while Florida is trying to contend. Of course, all the trades that we've spoken about in the last just 2 seasons, 3 even for this Cats team, and even going back to last year's game against Arizona Coyotes, which was a 3-1 win for the Panthers. Just That game last year was not a lot of activity for the Panthers, but a game that you clearly saw the Florida Panthers were just so much better than, and of course generating an early lead in last year's game. But in this one, of course, the score doesn't do it justice, which is the worst part about all of this, is dominating 5-on-5, doubling the amount of shots. Even though faceoffs aren't the end all be all for this team, winning in the circle 47 to 43% as far as that. 51 shot attempts to their 28 5-on-5. But what's the story in this, Jacob? Special teams. The Panthers are one of the worst teams in the NHL. Before the numbers updated, I saw that they were 29th on the power play, around like 7% prior to tonight's game. Their penalty kill was off to a decent start, but now they have given up at least a power play goal to their opposition for the 7th straight game. And this is if there's finger pointing to put on one person, I haven't done this much this season, but it's the coach, Paul Maurice, in this situation as far as special teams categories. How about you?
It's unfortunate, but I have to agree with you on that. And it feels a little bit like we're back in the Bob Bugner years, which is really unfortunate to say at this stage, because Bob Bugner teams, we would outshoot everybody. The quality of shots was not great necessarily, but these Panther teams under Bob Bugner outshot everyone. And it too often did not translate on the scoreboard because the shot quality wasn't there. And the difference with those teams was they were overly reliant on the power play. Did not have the kind of 5-on-5 talent or the 5-on-5 success, so they were overly reliant on the power play, and they did outshoot everyone. But this is similar in a lot of ways, because the Panthers are outshooting every team they play against. It's never really close. They're outshooting everyone, but when it comes time to finish, missing the net, shots wide. We saw 3 hit the post today, which is a little bit of bad luck, but at the end of the day, it's still a shot that you got to put that on the net. The post is not part of the net, and they're missing key chances to finish. We saw a breakaway from Patrick Hornquist, doesn't score. Rudy Balcers hits the post on a wide open net. Matthew Tkachuk made a great move, rang it off the crossbar. Anton Lundell hit the crossbar. Gustav Forsling had at least 3 chances wide open right down the middle, where he could have either stepped in and gotten a little closer, but he takes a slap shot and misses the net. It's a lot of missing the net. And then when you have those issues 5-on-5 where you're dominating play but you're not finishing, then your special teams have to come up big. And right now the Panthers are playing a style of hockey where every game they're spotting a team 1 goal. And if you can count in a 1-goal deficit in every game because their power play is going to score and yours is not, and you're playing from a hole every game. It's as if you're starting the game down 1-0, and that you cannot win that way. So it's pretty remarkable they even have a 4-1 record at this point, because it could be worse the way their special teams has played. This is a league driven on special teams at this point. The power play is a huge part of the game, and they've simply just been absolutely horrendous since the season started. And we've seen Paul Maurice and his coaching staff try to change some personnel. It hasn't worked, and it's at a point now where if the personnel changes aren't getting it done for you, you have to change the philosophy. You have to change the actual scheme. You can't just keep subbing bodies in and playing the same style. You have to change something stylistically, because right now they're running into a brick wall and they keep doing it.
Do you remember the question I asked? This was back in May when I asked this question. Do you remember the question I asked after the Washington series when they went 0 for 18 on the power play but still won the series? Do you remember the question I asked?
What was the question?
I asked, are power plays overrated? And all 3 of us said no to that to that question. And of course, it cost them in the Tampa series, and now we're seeing it really early on in this season with the power play. And let's go to the penalty kill. Of course, the Panthers trying to check the puck, trying to get it out of their own zone, but too many times is they're unable to reset. And both goals by the Arizona Coyotes, and Lawson Krause getting the first one and almost had a second one before Spencer Knight had a incredible save on a backhand, and then just a few seconds later, the Arizona Coyotes get a second one. But what's going on with the penalty kill is that they're not getting in a position to block shots neither, and so many open shooting lanes for the Arizona Coyotes, and it's giving Spencer Knight a clear a clear sight to the person shooting the puck, and not giving a chance for a deflection, and I think that's the issue as far as the penalty kill.
Yeah, too often we've seen guys on the penalty kill, especially the forwards, overcommitting chasing a puck carrier, and when they don't get it, they're so late getting back into position. And it's kind of the similar thing with the power play. Guys are making lazy passes, they're not able to enter the zone, and then everyone is dropping back and resetting and then coming into the zone slowly as a group. You cannot enter the zone that way on the power play. And on the penalty kill, if you don't get that puck carrier, you need to be back in position almost immediately. You have to hustle back to your spot and reset. And we're just not seeing it. Guys are getting out of position, and then they're scrambling, and no one's making a key block. It's really a mess. It's tough to watch that penalty kill right now because it honestly starts at the draw. We're losing too many defensive zone draws on the penalty kill. Power plays are getting set up right away instead of having to retrieve the puck and off of a lost faceoff. So the Panthers are losing the draw. They're chasing puck carriers. They're not getting to the puck carriers. Then they're taking too long to reset, and that's how you end up getting beaten by guys like Lawson Krause and Nick Ritchie. And if you're getting beat by guys like Lawson Krause and Nick Ritchie, you don't stand a chance against guys like Austin Matthews, Steven Stamkos, and the superstars that they have to contend with in this division. So we're definitely on high alert now, especially as special teams are concerned, because this schedule, I mean, losses to Philly, Chicago, and Arizona, it literally can't get any easier unless you're playing in the AHL. I mean, those are the teams that you have to capitalize against, and they're not doing it. And it's going to get real nasty really fast in the Atlantic Division if they don't sort this out, because there are some absolutely lethal special teams units in the Panthers division that they're going to have to figure out. And right now, I'm not seeing a whole lot of signs of that happening.
Yeah, and for the Panthers, it's funny because we think when we see all the numbers that favor them and even the analytical numbers that favor them, you want to think that this is gonna that eventually the pucks are gonna go through the net. But how many times are we gonna keep saying that before as the losses pile up? And that's the frustrating thing about this, because I don't know. I was saying that a week ago that the goals are going to come, the goals are going to come, the goals are going to come, and then credit to Karel Vejmelka credit to him for the performance, but we can't keep saying that eventually these goals are going to go in. Maybe they will. Maybe a week from now we'll look dumb by me saying this statement right now, and I'll be very happy to look dumb by saying what I'm saying right now. But it's just how many times can we say it?
I agree, and like you said, credit to Veggie over there for Arizona, had a great game. But if we're being realistic, then it's when you have to say credit to Veggie, credit to Carter Hart, credit to Alex Stalock. We've been getting goalies. It's not like goalies just all of a sudden turn into Superman the second they play the Panthers. It's something that the Panthers are doing that are allowing these goalies to have good games. It's not getting traffic in front of the net. It's shooting everything from the outside, not enough slot opportunities. It's a lazy power play. The power play right now, it feels like we don't have a distributor. Of course, we knew that was going to be somewhat of an issue losing Huberdeau. Matthew Tkachuk, as great as he is more of a net front player, not so much the creative passer on the wing. So it's something that they're going to have to alter the power play philosophy on, which hasn't happened yet. It's a lot of things that these goalies are making incredible saves, making timely saves, but the Panthers are also doing a ton of making them look good, because they're missing so many golden opportunities. And right now we're 10 games in, and we've got 2 combined goals from Alexander Barkov, Sam Reinhart, and Sam Bennett. 2 combined goals on the year. You simply cannot win that way. It's not possible. There's going to have to be some amount of leadership stepping up and not necessarily putting the team on their back and carrying the team, but at least pulling their own weight. And the Panthers best, highest paid and most talented players are just not doing it, because right now, for being realistic, without Etu Luostarinen, Colin White, and Matthew Tkachuk, I have no idea what this team's record would be. We might already be resigned to the fact that we are not making the playoffs, if not for those three guys as forwards. They've quite literally carried the offense, and that's a scary place to be right now if you're counting on Luostarinen, Colin White, and Matthew Tkachuk as your only three consistent scoring options.
Yeah, and we'll discuss more of those three, along with the fourth line for the Panthers, who actually was a line that, in my opinion, really stood out for the Panthers in this game for as far as generating the most amount of chances. But first, we're gonna tell you all about Built Bar, and in this one. Can we pause this pod for a second? Okay, we're paused. Great, because you got to try this. What we're talking about, Built Bar's new reimagined flavor. Cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, coconut brownie topper. White chocolate, peppermint granola. It's Built's take on the granola bar, so it's more filling, and it's insanely tasty. And candy cane brownie puff. Built Puffs are like biting into the universe most delicious cloud. First off, for anyone who hasn't tried Built Bars before, they're literally the best tasting protein bars ever built. They're revolutionizing nutrition, as we know, with 100% real chocolate, 17 grams of protein, and shockingly, low sugar and calories, 130 calories. Just sink your teeth into that first bite and it'll change your life forever. I'm not kidding. There will be a time before you try these new Built flavors and the magical, wonderful time afterwards. You're probably wondering which new flavors are my favorite. An unanswerable question to say at the least. They are all unbelievable, and they're all different. So you can order a mixed box and try all 5 flavors for yourself. Built, you got to try this. Get 15% off your order right now by using the code LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. Once again, that's promo code LOCKEDON15 for 15% off at Built.com. Second segment on this Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Armando Velez. I got Jacob Winans here on the usual Winans Wednesday. And Jacob, it's crazy because the tempo for this game, for the first period, there wasn't too much tempo, but of course, Ryan Lomberg, the Energizer Bunny, was really the guy that really was very active for the Panthers at first. Patrick Hornquist getting a breakaway on his own, blocking a shot in his own zone, and then taking it by himself. And then later in the game, having a 3-on-1 opportunity where he almost scored. And I believe he was, if I'm not mistaken, he was the guy who also got an opportunity shorthanded for this team as well. So, and of course, Eric Stahl, of course, big resume. We know he's not the same player as he was when he first broke out into the leagues. A second overall pick, Stanley Cup champion, former captain. But the eye test told me that this was probably the best line of the game, even though they didn't get on the score sheet. But man, we saw Barkov get. We saw Barkov the last 3 games, 5 shots on goal, 6 shots on goal, the most the last 3 games. But in this one, getting 2. Carter Verhaeghe getting 2. Matthew Tkachuk got a great opportunity at the end where off a rebound, Sam Reinhart just tips it to Matthew Tkachuk and just nearly gets it in to tie the game. But man, it's going back to what the first 6 games was for this team. And if your fourth line is the best line in the game, you're not going to win much in this league.
Agreed. The first period in particular, Ryan Lomberg was by far the best player through the first probably 13 to 15 minutes of the hockey game. And to say he was the best player, it's almost doing him a disservice, because it wasn't a situation where he was just the best player. He was by far the best player, the only one who had his legs going, who was playing with any kind of hustle or effort. That's just not what you're looking for, especially against a team like Arizona, where you expect to come out, you expect to jump on them early, you expect to dominate that game and not necessarily coast, but you want to be in a comfortable position playing against Arizona, because the talent level, the Panthers, even with all their injuries right now, even with the key players out like Ekblad and Duclair, the talent level is drastically different between the Panthers and the Coyotes, and I don't think anyone can argue that. So the fact that Ryan Lomberg was the only one who came out and took it seriously as an NHL game in that first period was really concerning to see, to be honest. Now, the fourth line was solid. Lomberg was good, almost scored a highlight reel baseball style goal. That probably would have been one of the goals of the year if that had just been a couple inches below the crossbar. Patrick Hornquist was really good, got a couple of chances, didn't finish them, but Patrick Hornquist is not a guy I expect to finish a whole lot of breakaways, so I can't fault him too much for that. And then Eric Staal, solid again. I still would prefer Nick Cousins on that line. I love Eric Staal's resume and his leadership qualities. No discredit to him, but just at his current age and just his skill set at this time, I feel like he's more of a replacement level player like Joe Thornton last year, a guy you can sub in, not on an every night basis. So I would prefer Nick Cousins on that fourth line right now, but that's not to say Eric Staal has done anything to lose the job. It's just that Nick Cousins is the guy I think is better equipped for it right now. That fourth line, they've consistently brought the hustle and the effort, and the rest of the lines just really haven't. One of the biggest problems I think we're seeing with these lines right now is the fact that last year, what made the Panthers so dangerous was the fact that they could rely on Barkov to carry his line, and they were able to rely on Jonathan Huberdeau to carry his line. You're able to split those guys up. Right now, we've got Barkov and Tkachuk together on the top line, and the depth is just not there. The second line with Sam Bennett and Sam Reinhart, you would expect Reinhart to be a guy who could pick up the slack. He's not doing it. And Rudy Balcers, as solid as he's been, he's not a line driver. Sam Bennett is not a line driver. And we're in a really tough position as far as that's concerned. So it's unless you're able to split up Barkov and Tkachuk and create some balance and some depth, I don't know that this is sustainable, what they're doing offensively with these lines. I don't know that it's ever going to generate enough offense the way it's currently set up. And I don't think we can afford to wait around until Anthony Duclair is back, because by then it could be too late. So something's going to have to be adjusted with these lines. And honestly, it's unfortunate because the third line of Luostarinen, Lundell, and Colin White has been so good, especially defensively. You really might have no choice but to split them up at this point. And not because they're doing anything wrong, but because the other lines clearly need help. The second line needs help. Sam Bennett is clearly struggling. He's not creating any offense, really. He's having a tough time trying to carry that line. Sam Reinhart has created just about nothing, 5-on-5. His chances are coming on the power play, and he's not exactly finishing them. There's a lot of question marks with this forward group right now, which is a really weird thing for us to be saying, because everyone's question marks are on the defense. Mm-hmm. And Brandon Montour and Gustav Forsling have stepped up beyond anyone's expectations. Josh Mahura has been a diamond in the rough. Radko Gudas has been solid. And we've gotten solid play from Kierstead and now Lucas Carlson. So the defense has held their own. It's the offense. They're not stepping up. The depth is not there. The scoring from the bottom three lines right now it's just not there. So I don't know exactly what the lines are going to look like against San Jose, but again, it's a situation where all eyes are on Paul Maurice, because if you continue to roll out the same group as it's currently constructed and expect a different result, I think that's coaching malpractice, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, that's the definition of insanity. And putting Tkachuk on that top line hurts a player, especially like Rudolph Balcers, who had such a great start and almost had a goal before hitting the post. And like you spoke about Colin White and not wanting to split up that line. And honestly, if I'm the coach, I'd be reluctant to split up that line too. I mean, Colin White got a goal in this one, deflecting a shot off of Josh Mahura. Josh Mahura once again generating offense for the Panthers as well. What a find for Bill Zito. So there's a little bit of positives to come out of this game. Hard to find a few positives after a loss like this, but you got to wonder if Colin White should go to Barkov's wing. That's something I've kind of a little thought about early in the season, and then I said, okay, let me hold off for just a little bit because this is a line that's playing well. But what about Sam Reinhart back on that third line with Anton Lundell? There's a bit of familiarity that we saw all of last season, and look what happened. He was over a point per game player in the last 60 plus games of the season last year. I know Mason Marchment isn't here anymore, but why not give that a shot?
Yeah, so right now it's time for some hard honesty here, and some of this stuff is tough to say, but it's the truth. Matthew Tkachuk was put on that top line to help get Barkov going because
Correct.
Barkov was not carrying his weight.
Correct.
Barkov was not producing on that line. He wasn't driving the play. So they put Tkachuk up there to boost Barkov. Barkov is a $10 million a year player. He's the team captain, and he was if not for an injury in last year's season, he would have been top 5 in the MVP voting. You do not need to put someone on the wing of an MVP caliber player. That player is expected to carry that line. And Barkov is going to have to find it in himself to carry that line. No matter who's on his wings, he's going to have to carry that line. We've seen guys like Sidney Crosby carry lines of Connor Sherry and Dominic Simone and be over a point per game. I mean, now I'm not saying Barkov needs to be prime Sidney Crosby, but he has to be a number one center who can carry a line. Any team that has a number one center and is a contender, they don't have to worry so much about that line producing no matter who's on the wings. That's just how it is. So with Barkov and Verhaeghe, kind of the mainstays on that line, I think you can go with a Colin White on the right wing. You should be able to go with anyone on the other wing, but it shouldn't have to be Matthew Tkachuk. Matthew Tkachuk should be able to go to that second line and help that line. Matthew Tkachuk should not have to be used as a player who goes to get the captain going. So that's number one. And number two is Sam Reinhart. I don't really know what the issue is with Reinhart's game this year, but he's just not generating anything. And I think the problem, what I'm seeing at least, is that last year when he was on that Lundell Marchment line, he got to beat up on a lot of middle six lines. He wasn't matched up against the top line, the best defensive pairs last year. He got to beat up on a lot of second lines. He got to beat up on a lot of third lines. And if we're being really brutally honest about it, Mason Marchment was the one who was forechecking, retrieving pucks, taking a lot of those hits to open things up for Anton Lundell and Sam Reinhart. Mason Marchment's presence is sorely missed right now, and it is showing all over Reinhart's game. But at the end of the day, Reinhart was productive in Buffalo without Mason Marchment. He's going to have to find it somewhere in his game here in Florida to be productive without Mason Marchment, because Mason Marchment's not walking back through that door. So these answers are going to have to come from in-house, because they can't come from outside. And it really falls at the feet of Barkov and Reinhart. Barkov's going to have to carry that top line. He shouldn't need Tkachuk to help him do it. And Sam Reinhart is going to have to find a way to produce and really play to his potential, because there's no Mason Marchment on this team, and you can't rely on another guy to get all of your opportunities for you. So that's really, for me, that's what I'm seeing with these lines. There's going to have to be some level of balance established here, because right now it's just not working.
And the worst part is that we know that Sam Reinhart is more than capable of generating goals, because prior to the trade from Buffalo to Florida, his best hockey came when Jack Eichel got injured in Buffalo, and when he was shifted to center, and that's when he really elevated his game even more for the Panthers to say, we saw how he was able to do without the captain of the Sabres at the time. And it's just I believe that when Sam Reinhart does get it going, it's going to be like a big streak coming for him. But hopefully it's sooner rather than later, my friend. So that's what I'm hoping, and maybe we will see a different set of lines for Thursday's game against the San Jose Sharks, which the Florida Panthers will be traveling overnight on a red eye to San Jose, and they will be having a 3 p.m. practice on Wednesday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern practice at the SAP Center over in San Jose. But we're going to transition over to the third and final segment where we're going to talk more about updates for the Panthers and scores across the league. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Third and final segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast on this Winans Wednesday edition of the show. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure you listen to Game NHL. It's daily recaps of all the games going around the National Hockey League. It'll be on the Locked On NHL page. On the NHL page. So make sure to subscribe to Locked On NHL, where you'll be listening to Locked On Game after every night, Monday through Friday. So, Jacob, good news for the Panthers, even prior to this game, is that Aaron Ekblad did travel with the team and was wearing a yellow non-contact jersey for the Panthers. So he's looked like he's going to be on track to return once the Florida Panthers return home. And earliest that he's able to come back is that November 12th game against the Edmonton Oilers, as he is required to miss 10 games and 24 days as far as being on LTIR. But for the scores across the league, so just looking at the scores prior to recording, the Panthers' next opponent, the San Jose Sharks, Erik Karlsson has a hat trick tonight against the Anaheim Ducks. 9 goals on the season. I haven't checked the most recent updates on that game. Last time I checked, it was going to overtime, but 14 points in 12 games for a former 2-time Norris Trophy winner, and turning back the clock from his days in Ottawa when he carried that 2017 Ottawa Senators team, who probably had no business being in the Eastern Conference Final, and just turning that back the clock. And let's not forget that he has a rod in his leg as well from the surgeries that he's had. So Erik Karlsson just tearing it up on a San Jose Sharks team that's rebuilding. Other scores across the league is one game that I did not get to watch that I missed one hell of a game, a very low scoring game, a 1-0 New York Rangers win against the Philadelphia Flyers, where the Rangers generate 36 shots to Philly's 19. So Carter Hart was standing on his head. Let me see if Igor Shesterkin was in net for the Rangers. Yep, it was Shesterkin versus Carter Hart in that one. Vegas wins again. This time against Washington. Minnesota wins. Boston completes a comeback against the Pittsburgh Penguins. The New York Islanders defeat the Chicago Blackhawks. Dallas beats LA. Edmonton beats Nashville 7-4. Seattle gets a win over Calgary. And the New Jersey Devils, after a rough start to their season, defeat the Vancouver Canucks. And man, that New Jersey Devils team might finally have arrived as far as a team that has had some expectations to finally make the playoffs, and they continue to win again. And the final score of that Ducks Sharks game that I was talking about earlier in this segment, the Ducks did win that in a shootout. Frank Bracciano did get a goal in that one as well. But man, the Panthers' next opponent, the San Jose Sharks, like I said at the top, Erik Karlsson, just the bright spot really for this San Jose Sharks team, and it's not going to be an easy one come Thursday night.
Yeah, the Sharks are a team that has a lot more talent than their record indicates. They're definitely top heavy. The bottom of their lineup is definitely in a rebuild, but they do have some guys who can hurt you. You got guys like Logan Couture. You have Timo
Thomas
Meyer,
Herter.
Tomas Hertl. Those are really good players. Defensively, Erik Karlsson. I'm very happy for him, seeing him kind of revitalize his career. A guy who's dealt with a ton of injuries. He's just played a ridiculous amount of minutes in his career as a top defenseman. Going back to his days in Ottawa, a lot of expectation when he signed in San Jose. So I'm happy for him finally getting his career back to that elite status. It's good to see him doing that. And I hope he stays healthy. But for the Panthers against San Jose, that is definitely not going to be an easy game. And I think we're definitely past the point now where we can consider any game an easy game. Mm-hmm. I think you look at teams like Chicago, Philly, and Arizona. I mean, if you consider those easy games, it doesn't get easier. So those are the easiest ones you're going to have. So San Jose is definitely not going to be an easy game. And goaltending against the Sharks, for whatever reason, it seems like the Sharks goaltenders always give us a hard time, especially when it's James Reimer in net. He seems to somehow pull off some incredible games against the Panthers, and I don't know what that is, because I wish we had a little more of that when he was in the Panthers uniform. And that's not at all disrespect to James Reimer. It's more credit to how he's played since he got to San Jose. So it's that should be a good one, another late one, and hopefully the Panthers have their legs under them. We've heard reports of Ekblad skating again, so we're kind of in that mode where just stay afloat, scrape out a couple wins, get your franchise defenseman back, and hopefully get this power play going, get our penalty kill back on track with your number one defenseman back there, anchoring both of those units. If we can survive this road trip, do well, maybe, honestly, I really see no reason why the Panthers can't win all three of the remaining games on this road trip. They should be favored in all three of them. I think that should be the expectation. They shouldn't sell themselves short on anything like on that at all. They should definitely have that expectation for themselves, and it's going to be a real tough road when they get back home, because the homestand coming up is kind of a gauntlet. Teams like Carolina coming in, Washington's coming in, Edmonton's coming in, Dallas is coming in, and Calgary's coming in. So a lot of familiar faces will be back in the building, as well as last year's playoff opponent and the best player in the world. So it's going to be a tough stretch. They're going to need to pile up some of these points in the bank right now while they can, because those are not going to be easy games. And if we can get the forwards going, get the special teams going, hopefully get Reinhart and Barkov a couple more pucks in the net, I feel pretty good about where they're going once healthy. Let me ask you a question as far as Ekblad's impending return. Paul Maurice has been he seems to really like Mark Stahl, but Josh Mahura is playing out of his mind right now. When Ekblad gets back, what do you think the defense pairs are going to look like for you? Do you think who do you think fits where? Do you think Forsling and Montour stay together? Do you think Mahura gets second pair minutes? Do you think a Gudis Stahl pair? I mean, what do you think the defense looks like when Ekblad's back in there?
I don't think you could split up Mahura Gudis right now. You can't. I don't think you can. I think that's just been one line that's been clicking. And Radko Gudis was asked about mentorship for Josh Mahura. I think he was asked about it prior to today's game, and really taking him under his wing as far as somebody who's in a different situation. But we could easily see. I think we could easily see Ekblad Montour, possibly. Montour does have that dual flexibility of playing on both sides as well, which is a luxury for someone like Brandon Montour. And Brandon Montour has just been outstanding in this season. But it wouldn't be surprising as well to see Forsling Ekblad back. I mean, it's such a small sample size for Ekblad and Forsling, so we still don't know what we got as far as that pair. I mean, as far as Ekblad's Corsi 4 in the first few games, it's like 39% for Ekblad, but it's still you can't judge on that much of a sample size for Eki. So I still want to give Ekblad Forsling a little bit of a chance before Paul Maurice really shuffles things. But I know that for sure Gudis and Mahura is like not something that I would like to split up. Mark Stahl, of course, he has his issues, but there was actually a stretch of the game actually today where Mark Stahl had multiple blocked passes right in front of Spencer Knight in this one. So I was actually impressed by a few of the stretches that Mark Stahl had on Tuesday night's game. So it hasn't been all bad for Mark Stahl. I'll say that. So that's kind of, but we know there's going to be stretches. That's the thing for him.
Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah, like you said with Mark Stahl, it's not like he's a consistently bad player. He's I would say he's consistently solid, except for it seems like at least once a game he'll get burned or he'll get walked or have a breakdown that gives up a scoring chance. It's like a once a game occurrence. So I think he gets a lot of bad reputation because that once a game breakaway or something that he gives up, it looks bad. He did give one up against the Coyotes. He got turned around and gave up a really, really solid scoring chance. But I don't think he's been as bad as everyone is making it sound like. I think he's been mostly solid. It's just the moments where he's not usually end up being grade A scoring chances, which is kind of unfortunate for him. But I this is not a place I thought we'd be right now, where I'm a lot more confident in our defense than our offense, and it seems like we're just trying to tread water until Duclair gets back and can balance out that top six, which is, I don't know. I really don't know how much pressure we want to put on a guy coming off of a torn Achilles to come in and play savior to the top six. That's a big ask of a guy who's going to be working through a lot of physical setbacks to get back out there and contribute. So it's definitely not last year. Last year we didn't have a care in the world right now last year. So this is definitely new territory for us. We're trying to, there's a lot to figure out and not a whole lot of answers. We're just trying to see if they can kind of grind some wins out here. It's definitely a change of pace for what we're used to the last couple of seasons. We've gotten spoiled. Definitely.
You took the words out of my mouth about being spoiled for this team, and there's gonna be a lot of questions on who to send down when Ekblad comes back, and I've already done some of the math for the Panthers, and signing Eric Stahl makes it a little bit more difficult. And I think the obvious one to send down is Matt Kierstead because he's waivers exempt, and then with Nick Cousins not playing much, his salary just gets slightly under 85.5. Remember, remember the listeners, 85.5 is the number for now because of Anthony Duclair's LTIR status. So you got to at least get under 85.5 as of now if you're the Panthers. So Nick Cousins, if you were to find a way to get him off the books, whether it's through waivers, that just gets it under 85.5 for the Panthers. So the signing makes it a little bit more difficult, but Paul Maurice has shown as of right now that he's able to, that he trusts Eric Stahl more than Nick Cousins. But of course, there's familiarity with Eric Stahl. That's not the first time that Paul Maurice has coached him. So I think he's going to favor him pretty much by default. But so we'll see as the coming weeks come as far as that. So as far as Thursday's game, it'll be a 10:30 p.m. Puck drop. Another late night for us for at least the next few games. ESPN Plus exclusive game. The game will be called by play-by-play by Leah Hextall with analyst Casey Campbell Pascal as far as that broadcast, and we will have a recap of that game with Nick Fairbanks on a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. But prior to that, tomorrow on Locked On Panthers, we're going to try to bring in the host of Locked On San Jose Sharks, JD Young, who is actually from the southeast U.S. area before moving over to San Jose. So he is familiar with pub subs. So we're going to have a little bit of a conversation on that on Thursday's show. And he is also a fan of another South Florida sports team, the football team here. And we might talk a little bit about the big trade that happened for the Miami Dolphins that happened on Tuesday. So make sure to check that episode out on Thursday. So Jacob, I know it wasn't an
connection.
easy one to talk about tonight as far as the Panthers 3-1 loss. It's 2:08 a.m. on a Wednesday morning after a late one, but thank you once again for joining another edition of Winans Wednesday here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But tell everybody where they can find you online.
Definitely. You can find me online at Jacob Winans 8 on Twitter. I'm usually pretty active there. A little bit more active after losses than wins, as you'll see, but that's all right. It's still early. We'll get this thing figured out.
Absolutely, man. And thank you once again. And next week's Winans Wednesday, we won't be staying up this late, so that's a benefit for next week. So thank you so much once again for not only doing the show but staying up with me. So I will see you next week. Thank you once again, my friend.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On NHL and Locked On Fantasy Hockey. We'll be covering all the regular season activities around the National Hockey League. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On Today. Locked On Today gives you a 20-minute podcast on all things surrounding the world of sports, including the take of the day. Locked On Today, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.